Hey everyone, I want to welcome you back to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. Here we'll be looking at the next 2 weeks of astrological aspects with my favorite astrologer, Jyoti Wind.
Thank you, Lauren. Always a pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah, Jyoti, I'm really looking forward to you helping me understand a little bit about what we're experiencing right now.
Well, I think I want to get to that at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of like dealing with the sludge. But
Okay.
I want to start out with the fact that we're moving in toward a new moon solar eclipse on October 2nd at 12:49 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And it's got a little bit of a bunch of planets and asteroids all together. It's the moon and the sun and Lilith, the shadow, and Mercury, excuse me, all together within 1 degree of each other. So actually, it's sun, moon, and Lilith all the same degree. And so this is, a new moon is always a new cycle. It's the beginning of a moon cycle, of a month-long process. And so this is Libra, and Libra always wants a balance, wants diplomacy and cooperation and equality. So that's always about Libra. And this particular one with Lilith being the same degree as the sun and moon, um, it's curious. It's kind of like, what's the shadow side of all of that?
Hmm.
Of wanting cooperation, wanting diplomacy. Does that mean sometimes we don't say what we really want to say because we're trying to be diplomatic and keep the peace, which is not always a true peace. Sometimes it's a false peace, as they call it, where you're just doing the day to day, but there's still feelings underneath. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? So, what is all that? What is that shadow side of Libra? Being agreeable, being uh, forthright to an extent, but usually diplomacy takes charge. So, what is the shadow side of balance? I would say the shadow side of balance is chaos.
Hmm.
So where might, with Mercury right after Lilith, 1 degree away from the whole stellium of planets, where do we have insight? Where do we have insight into what our shadow side is? The shadow is the unseen parts of ourselves. You could call it the unconscious. And so, how is this new moon giving us insights into where we get in our own way, where we're not authentic with ourselves, where we try to make things be okay for the people around us, even while we might be in a stew?
Interesting. Interesting. So, Jyoti, remind us about the fact that it's an eclipse and how those tend to impact these aspects.
Well, it means that within the next 3 to 6 months, we're still looking at this. We're still working on these things, especially if somebody has something at like 10 degrees Libra. That's the degree of the eclipse, or 10 degrees of certain other signs that it would aspect. Um, then that person is being hit by the eclipse, as you would say, and influenced. And so, in any event, for the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to be working with some of these issues collectively.
Hmm. Hmm. I've often heard that an eclipse can bring about a sense of instability, yet this is in Libra and we're looking at balance. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think maybe it's looking at like the true peace and the false peace, maybe the true balance versus the false
Mhm.
balance. Oh,
Yeah,
I've got everything up in the air. I'm juggling things as
sure,
Libra tends to do.
sure.
Everything's good, everything's fine. but if one little thing comes in, the whole house of cards falls down. So where do we really have balance? Where are we more sure of what's working for us? You
Mm,
know, I think because Mercury's there, it's giving us insight into where that imbalance might occur, you know, and seeing some of the parts of us that get in our own way, especially if it's reactive. You know that there's response and there's reaction. And if we're reacting, we're acting unconsciously to a set stimuli. Okay, if we're responding, we're giving ourselves time from that stimuli to think about, how do I want to deal with this situation? Which is the conscious way
sure.
of dealing with that situation, where the reaction is unconscious. We're often running, our mouth is going, or we're angry or we're pissed off because a button got pressed.
Right.
And it's not so much about what the other person does. It's kind of like how we respond to it, and how are we responding rather than reacting. So
Yes.
I think, anytime Mercury is with Lilith, there's a golden opportunity here to see. The other day I had a situation with somebody that, boy, I could have been ready to roll, just my reaction would have been a definite, I'm not dealing with this, or I don't like this situation. And yet I took a breath and I gave myself a moment, and I thought, I didn't think so much, how do I want to respond to this, as much as I don't have to react here.
Mhm.
And it gave me that moment to just breathe and stay calm in myself, and let the other person have whatever experience they were having. And I didn't feel like I needed to join in. I didn't need to engage. I mean, with my history, that is a beautiful moment. That is a that is a beautiful moment, because I have Mars in the first house. It's like, sometimes I said, I think I was born ready. I don't know what I was ready for, but I was born ready for
Love that.
whatever.
I love
And so I I have that knee-jerk reaction a lot of times, but I've been working on it and working on shadow material, and all of a sudden I just had that space to breathe and
Mhm.
just give myself that moment in time, and realize I did not want to engage. I was just going to breathe and be with myself, and let the other person have whatever they were having.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Contrary to that scene in, what was it, Sleepless in Seattle, where she says, I want what she's having. I did not want what she was having. That just occurred to me.
Yeah, but that's such a beautiful thing, because the first thing you did was kind of step out of yourself, which is something we'll talk about more on the end of this conversation today. But I think we're being gifted with more opportunity to that, to kind
Yeah,
of see from here, like,
yeah,
how am I
yeah.
gonna how am I gonna do this? Because I bet you were seeing yourself responding differently.
I felt like I stepped back in
Yeah,
myself, and
yeah.
I saw that any work I had been doing on this issue and practicing, that it came when I really needed it.
Mm,
That was the grace of it. It came when I really needed it, because I happen to like this person, but I don't want to engage on that level. And it makes fools of both of us. And
right.
so I just had made that decision somewhere along the line, that I just didn't want to react in any situation like that, somebody comes up and pushes your buttons, or
Right.
whatever. And yeah, it worked. And when those things work, it's such a grace. It's
Yeah.
such a grace because it just happens. You know, you've worked on it, you've put some things in place, you've said to yourself, I don't want to behave this way anymore. I want to have some room to make my own choices and how I want to be with another person. I don't want to just have this knee-jerk reaction. And so when it happens, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you shared that because that's such a real insight into what this aspect is offering us, right? The
Absolutely.
opportunity to respond versus react. So the energy will be there for us to do that.
And I want to say that off on the side, before the sun and moon degree, is the south node, 4 degrees away from this new moon eclipse degree. So there is something about breaking with the past. There is something there about old patterns that it's time for a new pattern. And the old pattern's right there. You can see it, but you're not stepping into it. You're breaking that old pattern. And that's what I felt happened, even though this is a week before the eclipse. I'm not even at the eclipse yet,
Sure.
but I've been working on this. And so if I were to describe this eclipse, I would say my story fits into that, even though it's a week ahead of time.
Yeah.
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 And that's one way it could look. Another way it could look is that people are forming partnerships. You might be offered some partnerships where you get to see what will work and maybe what isn't quite up to par, you know, in you or in the other person or in the agreement, so that you can tweak it before you give your okay to it.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always nice to be able to see ahead of time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
you're already in it.
Yeah. It's like a weather forecast that's actually accurate.
Absolutely. Yes. Cosmic weather. Yes, we're
Right.
looking at cosmic weather here. Yes. Okay, so then I wanted to look at 2 days later, Pluto is stationing from the 4th to the 20th of October. It's going to turn direct on the 11th, but during that 4th to the 20th, Pluto is the same degree and minute in the ephemeris. So people say, well, does that mean Pluto's standing still? No, that's not possible. But with our orb and Pluto's orb, it appears that way. So that means when a planet is stationing, that its energy takes over everything else. So that 4th to the 20th is like being in the middle of a Scorpio season, a Scorpio time frame, because Pluto rules Scorpio. And so with Pluto stationing, it's like, it's very powerful. It's very powerful, and it's very powerful for transformative experiences. And I just had this conversation with someone this morning about how, isn't it funny how people schedule things? They schedule conferences, especially right when Pluto in the spring is turning retrograde, or in the fall when it's turning direct. And I mean, if they want transformation, if that's what they're offering in their workshop or seminar, they will have it.
Very cool.
No doubt.
Very cool. Jyoti, help me understand this. Pluto is in Capricorn now, but it's stationing direct. We're going to have this Scorpio like
Overlay.
energy and Capricorn overlay over that, or help me understand
Well,
the layers there.
okay, so Pluto went back into Capricorn um, in early September
Right.
for its last pass of it being in this sign till the 19th of November. However, Pluto's orbit is that it always goes retrograde in the spring and then goes direct in the early fall. That's just the way it is. And so Pluto has been retrograding back through those beginning degrees of Aquarius back into Capricorn. Now it's stationing, getting ready to go direct, and it will go direct on October 11th. And for the next like 5 weeks, it'll still be in Capricorn, but it's moving direct, getting back ready to go back into Aquarius, where it will be for 20 years.
So is the Capricorn influence lessening during that period?
Emphasized with Pluto sitting in Capricorn at 29 degrees Capricorn. It's turning direct at that degree and staying at that degree for an additional 5 weeks, and then moving into Aquarius, a different dispensation, not the Aquarian age, but another dispensation. So this time, as Pluto is stationing at the last degree of Capricorn, I mean, it's giving us real insight. It's giving us the energy to make transformative changes that we've been dealing with since 2008, when Pluto first went into Capricorn from Sagittarius. And so it's giving us this last bit of, refinement energy. Okay, what didn't get put into place? What structures that don't serve us have not been torn down yet, that need to go with the Capricorn energy, Pluto and Capricorn? What are the last vestiges of change that we want to make from this Capricorn capitalism era of Pluto and Capricorn before it goes into Aquarius for 20 years? So it's even more powerful at that last degree of Capricorn, I would say, for that 5 weeks between the 11th of October and the 20th of November. And then it moves into Aquarius for 20 years. And then we have, a lot of different predictions around AI and riots in the streets, and, a lot of different kinds of possibilities. Yeah. The fall of the French Empire was the last time. So that was riots in the streets.
Sure.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to talk about is that Mars is going to go retrograde. It's going to turn retrograde on December 6th. However, it's moving into its shadow. It's entering its shadow on October 5th. So a full month before it goes retrograde, it's going to enter its shadow and give us a taste. Mars is in Cancer, and it's going to go into the first several degrees of Leo and then retrograde on December 6th, and then it'll go back through those several degrees of Leo back into Capricorn. And it is probably, I meant to look at this and I forgot, it's probably retrograde into the new year, February 2nd, roughly. Mars turns direct. So we've got this long time frame. Mercury is a lot quicker. Mars moves slower. So what we can expect with Mars, mostly in Cancer, is looking back at this last month or so, in August, September, and looking at maybe things that we want to redo in different ways. Mars in Cancer is about the homeland. It's about home. It's about family. It's about human family. It's about how we nurture others. Do we feed them food or do we feed them ideas? So it's having us look at a lot of that. There's a thought that if we enter the new year with a Mars retrograde, that there could be war. And that was true a bunch of years ago when we were involved with one of the skirmishes in the Middle East. So I don't know how that pertains to us. I know that in the course of this, um, Mars is going to mess around with the Pluto in the United States chart that we've just had the Pluto return of. I'll check that out. Maybe we'll talk about that the next time. Make a note for myself. And so I think that just generally speaking, as a nation, we have some transformational stuff that's going to come up, and rightly so. I mean, a nation is just like a person. It has a beginning and an end in a sense, and it has a life, and it has a birth chart, a beginning, and it goes through different throes. Yeah.
Interesting, Jyoti. I was thinking about this, and when you said that, there's a history of possibly war during that time, at first it didn't align, but when you're talking about home and family and like caring, that's kind of like the protection of the homeland, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Mars and Cancer, they will protect the home with their life.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. So now I want to talk about sludge. You and I have had several conversations loosely around this whole concept. So I just found myself unable and unwilling to initiate action. That's how I would say it. That I had some workshops I wanted to formulate and put together and format, and I just couldn't make myself do it. And then I'd think again, okay, well maybe I'll do this. And the main consistency for me in my life right now is these every 2-week podcasts and my day-to-day clients. But everything else is like up for grabs. And I started thinking, what is this? This isn't me. I mean, even in my changing and aging and everything, this isn't me. And so I started thinking about Saturn moving into Pisces. And Saturn entered Pisces in March of 23. So that was a good, year and a half ago. And I haven't felt this way all the way through it. But I started thinking about Mars and Pisces, and it's like walking through sludge. It
Yeah,
can be.
yeah,
It can feel like, you're trying to make progress, or you're trying to get somewhere or even move, and the impetus feels like it's overshadowed by this. Do I really want to do this? Do I really care? Do I really, is this the direction for me to go in? I don't know. Should I put more effort into it? I don't really have the effort, So I named it as walking through sludge. And I don't think it's just me.
yeah, yeah. For sure, Jyoti. I mean, I've experienced the same thing. And another interesting aspect of this that we talked about off recording was that we're real keen to do the day-to-day stuff, cooking a nice soup, gardening, right? Talking to a neighbor. Those things just come with ease, but it's those out of the ordinary day-to-day more projects just can't seem to get the momentum. We can't behind it. Would you agree
Yeah,
with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. And a bunch of people I've talked to, it's the same feeling, and when we think about, Pisces is the last sign. And so if you had a chart of just the regular zodiac signs, this would put Mars in Pisces in the 12th house. It would be 12th house affairs. And so not Mars, Saturn in Pisces. And so Saturn in the 12th house is good on service and has lessons around being willing to be of service, but uh really likes to just kind of hang out with itself, and I mean, Pisces is I mean, maybe this is not fair exactly, but part of Pisces is let's watch a movie and eat chocolates. Let Rome burn. They did that. Let it burn, you know? And so it removes itself from the world's affairs. It removes itself from,
Hmm.
the outer cares of day to day and just in a way shores itself up for the next round. So
Yeah.
we could say that this sludge feeling might be nothing more than us concentrating, not exactly concentrating, but kind of bringing our energy in towards center
Yeah.
rather than having it go out into a lot of different directions so that we're readying ourselves for this next round.
Yeah. It's like a conserving, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah. Jyoti, when does this aspect shift?
Well, May of 25. So another 7 months, six or 7.5 months. I mean,
Okay.
and it hasn't felt like that since the beginning.
No.
It's just felt like this since, Saturn went retrograde and it has been, stalling out kind of at around 19 degrees. Now it's moving retrograde. It's down to 14 degrees. But it's out. I should look to see when it goes direct. But it's out of Pisces in May of 25 and enters Aries, and that's a whole new ball game. And Mars turns direct roughly November 15th. So 14, 15. Sorry, Saturn. I keep putting Mars in there, my mistake. Saturn will go direct on November 14th, 15th in there. And Saturn going direct there, I'm hoping that that's what gets this walking through sludge kind of off to the side.
Hmm. You know, the March 2023 also does not align completely with me. More March 2024, March, April seems to align a little bit more. Is there something else that could have, um, I don't know, dialed that
Influence.
up a bit?
Um, Well, Mars was slowing down. It went retrograde at the end of June. It could have been other things. Oh,
Sure.
Mars was entered Pisces in April. In actually at the third week of March, Mars went into Pisces. So you had Mars and Saturn kind of neck and neck. I mean, they didn't get together. There was a Mars Saturn conjunction somewhere around the 11th of April. So Mars and Saturn together are the ability to harness energy and make something happen. It's active. You're
Yeah.
pushing past places where you've limited yourself, that Mars poking at that Saturn. However, they're both in Pisces. It's a water sign. You know, it's kind of like well, all right, let's watch an adventure movie instead of a romance and eat chocolates. Let's watch an adventure movie and eat chocolates. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
changes the venue a little bit, but it's not got that punch that Mars with Saturn would normally have if it was in a different sign.
Yeah. I think another analogy for me because of the Piscean water, because I've experienced this, it's like I'll get close to being able to lift something off and then the water recedes and it'll get close and then the water recedes and
Yeah,
so and then you're just floating back there going, okay, I'm just not going to try anymore for a while.
yeah, like give it its due, and
Sure.
and the cycle will change eventually. And right around that time in early May, like May 1st or 2nd, Pluto went retrograde.
Hmm.
So you've got Mars, Saturn, Pluto all retrograde, and because Pluto goes retrograde in the spring and direct in the fall, that's just its cycle these days. And so it's I was just going to look and see. I didn't think anything else was retrograde, although Mercury was retrograde for almost all of April as well. So there was a lot of things that were driving us in, that were
Yeah.
driving us into ourselves to look at and see what fit and what no longer fit.
Yeah, I think it's so great to talk about this out loud because one, we've been experiencing, if we have, others have, and to kind of name it and call it out in the room, but it's this thing of you start feeling a little inadequate. Like I used to be really efficient at these things, and suddenly I'm not. And at the same time, it's this pull inward. And so it's really not about efficiency. It's, I don't have that energy to put out there.
And to do it in the way I did it before.
Exactly. Exactly, Joe.
Because this Pluto going back into Capricorn, having us look at this whole Capricorn model, this corporation, this
Mm.
power over, this drive. It's lessening the drive for a lot of us.
Oh my goodness, that's perfect. I haven't been in a meeting yet recently that everyone doesn't show up apologizing that they're not prepared because this is it. And like, oh, I'm sorry, I just had all these other things, and you don't typically get that. And I think it's interesting because we're all apologizing, yet there's this universal change going on that we really don't have to apologize for.
No, no, but we've been schooled to
Yeah,
believe
yeah,
that we have
yeah,
to show up in
yeah,
certain ways, and Pluto's going, yeah, I'm finishing up with this business here, that business being done a certain way, looking a certain way,
sure.
and the business model and everything else, and it's like, yeah, no, take a break. It's like, no,
Cool.
don't have to
So,
show up in that way. So that drive and the way we maybe both have kind of created things and had a certain momentum. Um, yeah, and maybe it's the Saturn in Pisces sludge kind of feeling, but it's also this Pluto along with it that's just saying it's not business as usual anymore.
Jyoti, I'd like to rebrand that sludge word. If we can work on that, I
Sure,
think we can
sure.
sell it to more people.
Yeah, so sludge might be unfair, but
Yeah.
it just,
But
that's just what it felt like to me.
no,
Like I
agreed,
was trying
agreed.
to make headway. But you're right. I mean, it's slowing us down enough,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Maybe
know,
it's
that
how it should be.
yeah, it's all right. So wet sand. We're trying to make our way through wet sand,
Yeah,
and it's slowing us down um, enough to take a look at, if we can see it, of what's working and not working,
yeah.
and slowing us down enough to say, you got to do it differently.
Yeah, this is perfect. And I do love the wet sand because actually then you're walking in wet sand and you're more aware, right? You're noticing and if we were doing business as usual, we wouldn't be noticing all these things. And that's been the theme, right? We're not going to do business as usual anymore.
No, no. No, it's changing. It's been changing actually since 2008 when we had that recession. I mean, that was Pluto into Capricorn. That was the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, Jyoti. I'm really curious for our listeners what folks are experiencing themselves. So be great if you're listening to this to leave us some notes and thoughts on what your own personal experience is with this.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to read some too, because I know when something's happening, it's not just me. I'm
Yeah,
part of the collective, and so it's got to be happening with other people as well.
yeah. Jyoti, thanks for taking the extra time to delve into this.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.